Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. I have 7:01. By roll call of those present, Gina Stino,
Present.
Fran Collins,
Present.
Patrick Kennedy,
Here.
Ellen Mar,
Present.
and Rob Hillman. Did I miss anybody? No. So we'll see if there are other members join us, but otherwise we're a quorum. So my understanding is that we have, and I'm certainly happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, but we have to vote one capital item has been changed. There's one item from CPC that we need to vote, and there's a citizens article regarding the harbor on which we have not yet taken action. And while we have taken a vote on the proposal, the citizens petition concerning King Street, that article is materially changed. Mark's here. And part of the issue we had with that article is that the proponents hadn't asked to talk to us to seek our recommendation. So apparently they did. The article is different, and I'm hoping that somebody is able to put the revised article on the screen when the time comes, because it's different primarily in as much as it isn't just a general request for sidewalks, but now it's a specific request seeking a specified amount of money for studies. So we'll give us something to talk about, but it seems that that's sufficiently different from what we voted on to warrant, no pun intended, considering it again. So I hope everybody's okay with that. Since we have folks associated with that article with us, I thought maybe we'd do them first.
Why not?
Every other part of my brain says, no, you have to do these in numerical order. How can you not do that? But I'm gonna tamp that down and we'll go forward. So why don't you invite those folks in, and if somebody could put the current text of, well, did the new text make the warrant that got I should know this.
Doesn't look like it.
It did not. So if we could have the current text, that would be helpful. Yes, no?
So
Is this
Rob,
Is this 14, Rob?
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
unfortunately, I don't have the newest text for this article.
Well, just kind of a point of order, you can't change an article after it's
Yeah.
out of publication. So the only
it'd
thing
be
that
in
would
the-
change
it'd be in the motions.
would be in the motions, right? We never had
yeah.
the motion.
No.
So you're
that
looking
I
at
was-
an amended motion, because you
I
can't.
had,
change the
yeah,
article.
and I had asked that the motions get distributed this afternoon, but I don't think that happened. Is
I
that
hope-
true?
So I believe, Christine, you're still waiting on legal counsel for the motions to be completed.
Okay, I think in retrospect, I think we would have preferred to get an incomplete draft, but maybe that was difficult if there were things in there that would have been an incomplete draft that had wording inconsistent with what the lawyers ultimately would have approved. So I'm not gonna get too worked up about that. But we have a genuine problem because we don't have anything to vote on at this point. We don't have any text of a motion or rather an article. We've got an article, but it's materially changed by the motion. So I suspect what we should do is can somebody summarize
I can provide the motion.
But Rob, the warrant article can't be materially changed by a motion. The warrant article can only be materially changed by an amendment on the town meeting floor.
I expect
So-
that may be what's coming.
We have a vote. We have a vote on the warrant article. We did that at a prior meeting. I'm not sure why we would even have a further discussion on this. We don't have anything that's different.
Hmm.
But that's just
Oh,
my view.
No, I do,
When I'm-
you're right. I thought it, I mean, since they're, let's do this. As we have with other matters in the past, we've given proponents of positions 10 minutes or so to make a pitch. If it is amended, we may be called upon as a group or individually to opine on it at town meeting or not. But if there's nothing for us to vote on here now, we won't vote on anything here and now. Does that work for you, Patrick?
Yeah, that's fair. I always want to hear from opponents of the citizens petition.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been some, there's this other, and I apologize to the folks who are waiting to talk to us, but we seem to have identified another minor issue in the functioning of sort of our town meeting prep. And that is that when we have citizens petitions, somewhere in the process, it isn't made clear to anybody, or it isn't becoming clear to anybody that, you know, the advisory committee is an important stop in the approval process. We recommend articles to town meeting, and our recommendations are included in the warrant. I am going to assume nobody bothered to tell you that, because the alternative is you didn't want to talk to us at all, and that would just hurt. But and this happened with both of them this time around. So in future, I think I'm going to make it a lot more clear that you know, where there is citizens petition, that this should get teed up both by me. It's partly my problem. I knew they were coming and I should have insisted on it, but that we get to these faster. So that said, who is with us? Ms. Rollins and Ms. Richard. Do I have that correct? You're the two from the, okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Here's what we had. We got a citizens petition in a form that's contained on the warrant that says it is a request for the town to appropriate funds for a feasibility study and plan to construct sidewalks and other traffic calming, and public safety measures along King Street from Beechwood to Route 3A and the portion of Pond Street from King Street to Route 3A. That's what we got. And we had a fairly lengthy discussion amongst ourselves, and we voted not to support the article 8-1. And there are a variety of reasons, but I think I can characterize the at least one of the primary reasons for voting against was that it was described to us as what people sometimes refer to as a sense of the meeting article, that it's basically asking town meeting, hey, what do you think about this? And at least for my own vote, I don't think that is an appropriate thing for town meeting to do. I think town meeting is supposed to vote on proposals that become legislation of the town, and that's inconsistent. I will say, although that member is not on with us this evening, the one vote dissenting from that primarily focused on not creating barriers to citizens petitions, which are a valuable part of the town meeting process, which I sympathize with. I did what, but we all agreed that we as an advisory committee were not voting no because we're inherently opposed to sidewalks on King Street or Pond Street. So that was, and we were prepared to make that clear to town meeting at such time as we had a vote. So I now understand that there is or will be a proposed amendment that relates to actually attaching specific funds to this request. And while I think Patrick's points are all well taken, I think perhaps within my case, not always consistent spirit of openness. Give you a few minutes to describe sort of what it is that we can expect to hear at town meeting. And while as a board, we may not choose to change our position as individuals, we all have a vote. So once you go ahead and give us a rundown. I think all of us are, you can assume we're familiar with King Street. You can assume we've all driven down King Street in the last couple of months with an eye toward looking at the situation with sidewalks, and we kind of recognize,
Yeah.
you know, what you're talking about, but it's not for me to tell you what to say. So please go ahead. Who should we recognize first?
I can start, Madeline.
Go ahead.
We had a presentation that we sent over to Tracy. I'm not sure if you'd like me to share a screen or if you just prefer me to speak.
I think pictures are always good.
Okay. If you'd like, I can start off with the updated ask from after we spoke with Chris Senior today. That's a more specific.
Please do.
Okay. So it's that the town appropriate $80,000 from available free cash in the treasury of the town to fund a study and plans for sidewalks for this portion of King Street and Pond Street.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it? $80,000 from free cash to fund a study? Was that it? Fund
Yep,
a
to
study?
fund a study and plans. Yes.
Okay. And can you just give us the sort of summary of sort of what plans or what do you anticipate this doing?
Sure. So when we first kind of embarked on this and started speaking to people, we heard a lot of feedback of reasons why maybe it hadn't been done in the past, because it certainly wasn't the first time that people have brought it up in the town for this portion of road. So we'd gotten different responses that had to do with either ledge or possible wetlands and kind of all these barriers. So after speaking to members of the town and other people, a feasibility study or some sort of study that could really dig into what the possibilities are to increase the safety and the potential of adding sidewalks in this area of town is what we really wanted to do, so we could really feel like we were moving forward in a direction where we had some real concrete understanding of what could be done.
Okay, now, did you meet with the select board about the proposal, particularly with the money attached, with the amounts attached?
We have not yet. We just got this information from Chris Senior today.
Okay, now the select board, I think since this has become I'm sorry, I'm wrestling with a very large puppy. It's and he knows when I'm on a meeting, so he attacks, but but the select board, I think after this proposal began to percolate toward town meeting, did two things. One is they established a sidewalks committee to deal with, I assume, need and prioritization of projects. And second, they took a vote on your proposed citizens petition to refer it to that committee. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, why shouldn't the town do that? And I ask with this in mind, is that there are a lot of sidewalk projects in town, and coming to town meeting to get to the front of the line without downplaying the importance of King Street and the challenges it presents. But, you know, wouldn't it be more productive to work with that committee and put the King Street sidewalks in the context of all the sidewalk issues that are confronting the town right now?
So when we embarked on this effort, we weren't aware of a sidewalk committee, or it hadn't been announced.
Didn't exist. I think it's your fault. So
that one was being formed. We had been reading about, you know, the master plan, and we had seen all the plans for sidewalks or sidewalk improvements in the town, and we noticed that King Street was not on it. So there was a few reasons why we started this effort. And I think that although we would view all sidewalks or any addition to a sidewalk in town would be absolutely beneficial, there are some unique things about King Street that we feel like this effort, with the momentum and the support that we have, that we would like to be heard. And I have no doubt the sidewalk committee will be able to do great things and will actually be able to get stuff done. We did feel like we had a voice right now that we wanted to share, and that we thought it was important that people knew the unique circumstances of King Street and what a sidewalk there could add.
I'm going to ask one more question. I certainly, anybody else in the committee, please feel free to ask questions as well. But it sounds like the $80,000 number is a fresh number. I'm also cognizant that that's like the fully loaded salary of a newly hired teacher. It's no small amount of money. Where did that come from?
So that number came when we spoke with Chris Senior today, who had discussed it with, I believe, a few people on the team, including Brian Joyce and some other people that were familiar with previous, studies that had been done. And I believe that there is already a portion of the street that has been looked at as well. So there's a portion of it that might be able to be included in that too.
And
One other thing to add is
Go ahead.
that this mentioned to us that this was free cash available in the treasury currently. These are funds that have not been earmarked for anything as of now. And this was a conservative number that the folks that he was meeting with felt would take for what we're looking for, the funding of a study and for plans to be developed.
to be clear, I did not mean to imply that in order to fund this, we'd have to fire a teacher, not by any means. I know, that there is pools of money. I just sometimes think that it's good to remind ourselves of where the orders of magnitude exist. But Jean, I see your hand up.
Yes, excuse me. I'm just wondering if these ladies have taken the time to meet with the sidewalk committee?
It doesn't exist yet. It's
Okay,
been,
all right.
the select board voted, and if I'm wrong, I'd say the
To
subject to
refer it
correction.
to the
but
sidewalk committee, but I didn't know that it didn't exist.
The select board created a sidewalk committee, and I believe they're trying to fill it with citizens now.
Okay,
Which
We may apply to be members of the sidewalk committee. We're
I
very,
wasn't going to say that out loud, but yeah, I can see
Yeah.
how reasonable people could see that might be a
We are.
a good move.
but we know
um,
that these committees take a while to establish, and we know from experience that these sorts of things take many years to accomplish.
Oh, no doubt.
We
And,
feel as though this has been something that has been discussed on and off since the commuter rail station was put in. Because when that took place, King Street became a serious cut-through street for all of the neighboring towns. We feel as though we have a safety issue that is pressing now, that we wouldn't want to wait several years before acting, if we could, to make our neighborhood more safe for all of the residents of our part of town. So that is one reason why we feel, just one of the reasons why we feel that it's important to come forward now. And maybe even in addition to the sidewalk committee later. But we were given the opportunity now, so we'd like to take advantage of that.
Which is your right as citizens petitioners. Fran,
Yeah, about, I don't know, maybe 60 years ago, when we first came down here to South Main Street, there was a remnants of an old sidewalk out front, and I went to the town, and it didn't take too long, and we got the sidewalk reestablished, and some of the people said, oh, nobody will ever use it. Well, there's as much pedestrian traffic on the sidewalk as there is road traffic on the road. So it certainly can be done, and you certainly have identified an area where they really need to be put in. A couple of comments I had, I wish there would be a rule that pedestrians have to use the sidewalks, because we find people walking up the street all the time. But the other issue is, if you're going to run the sidewalk up Pond Street to 3A, what about the other side of 3A? I would think this would be an avenue for some of the school kids to go to and from school, and there is no sidewalk from the east side of Pond Street.
That's actually
side
what
of
we're
3A
requesting.
up to the high school.
Yes, so what we're actually requesting is new sidewalk between 3A and King Street and along King Street, so that our entire half of town will be connected to the other half of town. Currently, the only connection between the two halves of Cohasset is Beechwood Street. That's not acceptable for children to get to school quickly and safely.
Well, if you cross 3A now, there is no sidewalk on the other side of 3A.
It picks up
Julie,
around, it picks up there somewhere.
Yeah, further up.
It
past
does
Clay
pick up
Spring
on
Road.
Pond Street and Sawyer. So Pond Street and Sawyer do have sidewalks on them on the other side of 3A.
Okay, yeah.
And Julie is working with the state right now
Yeah.
to build more safety measures around the crossings of 3A because it is a state road. So we do understand that is a separate conversation and a separate effort. So
Mhm.
in tandem to speaking with the town, we are speaking with the state about the improvements that can be made for safety at those intersections.
But the sidewalk in Pond Street stops at the high school, doesn't continue down 3A. That's the only thing I'm pointing out to you, that you need to include that in your proposal as well.
Oh, yes.
Uh,
So, yes, there's a partial sidewalk or maybe a path. You're right. It's
Yeah.
not a real official sidewalk with curb. It's more of a path that the kids.
Dwindles down, yeah.
Okay, well, that's my point, that you should try and include to make the whole thing work, make it a connected piece of it, rather than just up and down King Street. That doesn't help too
Very,
much.
very good suggestion to add sidewalks on the other side of 3A between 3A and the school.
There you go.
You were assuming that that sidewalk that's currently there is good enough because kids are using that little strip right now to walk along. On the other side of 3A towards King Street, there is zero
Right.
sidewalk and nowhere to walk. And
Never
currently
has
our
been.
children are walking, like you mentioned, on the side of the road. Cars are driving quickly. They're not able to bike to school. It's really very dangerous right now. So that's one of the reasons why we felt it was important to connect them. A couple of other points. We feel as though our project directly benefits the town and its businesses by directly connecting one half of town to the other, as I mentioned before. We believe our project directly benefits residents by connecting them to the recreation opportunities on both halves of town. So as you know, on what we call our half of town, we have Wampatuck, Whitney Fair, and Lily Pond. And we'd love for the other half of town to be able to access that safely. Our project also directly connects residents to two shopping plazas. It would connect them to the Stop and Shop Plaza and the Walgreens Shaw's Plaza. And we believe that our project would be the first and only walkable, bikeable route for children to school for our side of town. Right now, nothing exists. All the other areas of town within 1 mile already have sidewalks to the schools. We live 0.2 miles from the school, but yet we must drive our children to school, and that adds to congestion, car congestion at the schools, and also it impacts our busing, which is severely impacted right now. We have trouble with busing in Cohasset currently. So those are just a few other points.
Thanks. I have two committee members with hands up, Ellen and then Patrick.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment from 3A to Clay Spring Road towards the high school, there's no sidewalk. And then from Clay Spring Road to the front of the high school past student parking, there is an elevated paved sidewalk. It's not curbed, but it's elevated off the roadway. And then after the athletic entrance to the high school, there is a paved curb sidewalk down. So it's just really that portion from 3A to Clay Spring Road that needs a sidewalk.
I appreciate you mentioning that, and we can certainly add that to our plans.
Patrick?
Yeah, if this warrant article were to pass at town meeting and the $80,000 were to be designated, who manages the procurement of engineering and study services? That's one question. Are you intending to manage that? Go out and seek bids, oversee the procurement process, analyze the bids, make selections on who would do it? How does that work? Second question is, the warrant article mixes and matches both installing sidewalks or studying sidewalks and traffic and other calming measures. What's the breakout between those two, what I view as completely different aspects of this proposal do you envision spending the $80,000 on?
So to answer your first question, that's a good question. I am definitely not experienced in any of the sidewalk building or procuring. I would hope that would be something that the town would be able to work with us on, as it, the portion of Sawyer that they were able to pave and the experience that the town has, I would feel that they would make the best decisions in that. We also think that, I'm sorry, can you remind me of your second part of your question?
Yeah, the second part is the warrant article specifically talks
Yes.
about constructing
Safety measures.
sidewalks and then and other traffic calming and public safety measures, which are traffic calming and public safety can be done through installing those speed limit, you're exceeding speed limit signs.
Yes.
Other things in the roadway to keep traffic slower. To me, it's different than sidewalks. So what's the
yes.
breakout of those items?
Yes, so that the calming safety measures was added because we realized that while sidewalks would definitely make a safer transportation lane for children or for any other residents that use that, there was still a speed problem on the street. I had a neighbor that said he clocked someone going 70 miles an hour. If you know that Beechwood, when you turn onto King Street from Beechwood, it is a flat, straight road. It's actually a very wide road that people try to cut through the lights. They try to skip 3A. They try to make up some time, and they really speed. It's quite terrifying, to be honest. So the reason why we added this additional safety measures is because we think that in addition to sidewalks, there's other things that could be done to make our streets safer. I don't believe it's really viewed as a residential area because people don't see a lot of people out there walking. They aren't understanding that kids are playing or kids are about to get up to their bus stop or things like that, because people are honestly somewhat terrified to walk on the street. So there isn't that much going on. So calming safety measures would be in addition to sidewalks to help with the speed and just the safety of the area.
So you want to use portions of the money for both. In other words, if you get the $80,000, you're going to come up with some proposal for breakout of engineering study for sidewalks and also using some of the money for these other traffic calming and safety.
What would be the best path forward to how to make it most safe, I guess, and I think that it might be a collection of different things. I think ideally sidewalks is what we're looking for because it separates people from traffic in the best way possible. However, there are other things that can be done in addition to that to ensure that it's as safe as it could be.
Okay, thanks.
As of now, I actually just was doing a count too, and I'm not sure if people were aware, but there's there's 100 single family homes in that stretch of street that we are looking at, that we proposed on those parts of King Street and that part of Pond Street. So over 100 homes are directly accessed of that road that are either on it or on direct side streets of it. We haven't been able to get numbers of actual children or how many people are in each of these homes, but I think that a number that basically is 100 homes in just that small stretch says a lot about how many people would be using this sidewalk and how many people are affected by it. Potentially.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I think that we understand where this article is likely to go at town meeting. We can only vote on things that are in front of us. So I don't think, as a matter of procedure, we can take a vote I'm not even sure that we could have taken a vote if we had the motions. But members of the advisory committee are free to speak to town meeting one way, frankly, or the other. And I think we're, better prepared as individuals to address this as it comes up. I don't think we even can change our vote, although we may be able to explain to town meeting that our vote was on our vote is on what's printed in the warrant. So I think that's all we can do. I think there's probably a variety of opinions, among us and our members who weren't able to be here tonight. But I think that it's better that you have spoken with the advisory committee than not for your purposes, but for our purposes. And I will say that part of our job, as it was described to me as a committee, is when articles are on their way to town meeting, whether they're town articles, select board articles, or citizens petitions, that our job is to ask questions, and sometimes hard questions, to help the proponents of these articles be prepared for the questions you're going to get off the floor. We hope we helped with that. And when you make your presentation and people do ask questions, you'll have some preview. So hopefully we did our job in that respect. So Ellen?
Yeah,
your hand is up.
I just have a record keeping question for Julie. Julie Rollins. Okay,
Yes.
what is your address for for our minutes?
Yes, it's 12 Hugh Strain Road.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And do you have Madeline's, Ms. Richards?
Yes, she's a petitioner in the warrant, so I have.
Oh, right. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, then I think we'll close that portion of the meeting. You're welcome to stay, not as panelists, but you're welcome to watch. This is an action-packed committee, as I'm sure you know. And if you have a strong interest in anything else we do, you're welcome to stay and watch, but you certainly don't have to. We won't feel neglected even a little bit. But thank you for checking in. We appreciate it.
Thank
So-
you for your time. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And just by
Okay.
Sorry, I was a minute late. We have the knack of scheduling these things for when my wife is traveling.
We lost him.
I was gonna say, did we lose Rob?
We lost our
I
chair.
accidentally put it.
He kicked himself out of the meeting?
I think because our vice chair isn't here, then Ellen takes over.
could be. I
Like,
was told you are no longer a
Sorry,
panelist.
Rob.
You're now a participant. So
what is that?
here I am.
Designated survivor? Someone else is saying hi.
But I think I sympathize with the petitioners and, from when I moved here, we're on Norfolk Road. I get a couple of hundred cars every morning, mostly late model Jeeps driven by 16-and-a-half-year-olds, zooming up to the high school. We could build a new building in town on the traffic fines you could get on Norfolk Road in a week. And we don't have a sidewalk. We have one of those raised shoulder things that, I grew up in a really crummy suburb of a really, really crummy town in New Jersey, and we had sidewalks and a grass strip and a curb and curb cuts. It was like living in the first world. It was great, but nope, not here. So, and having none at all, it's really too bad. But I think, I think it was right of us. I appreciate your time giving them a listen, and I think we'll do better in future town meetings, making sure that we ask petitioners to come early in the process. And if they don't, or they're not, evidently working on getting something ready. And that's not a criticism of these folks at all, but that we just don't if they don't bother to ask, after we've invited them, that we just don't bend over backwards. But I think this is a learning opportunity, if nothing else. That brings us to a couple of more warrant articles. We have one capital. Chris said we still have an open capital item. Is that right?
So Rob, there's actually 3 capital items.
Okay,
Because we had to make changes to 3. And there is still that one outstanding that you're unable to vote on this evening, still to this point.
okay. Well, again, I think we get to Patrick's point. If there are changes to articles in the warrant on which we've already voted, well, let's just take things one at a time so we get it done as right as we can. Which is the one that we weren't able to vote on? Was that the Osgood School
Osgood
vestibule?
School,
Yeah.
and that is still not ready to be voted.
Okay, then we're not going to vote on it. And what are the other ones that you just referred to?
Can I ask a
numbers-
question on that one, actually?
Yeah, sure.
If we're not ready to vote on it tonight, will it be pulled from from the warrant and pulled from town meeting? Or is it gonna go, or do you think it's gonna go forward to town meeting?
It's going to move forward. Capital's hearing it tomorrow evening.
Okay. So then, Rob, I guess we should discuss at the end whether we should schedule a meeting at 6:45 PM before town meeting.
Yeah,
I've been noticing them as a matter of course to
Yeah.
preserve our rights, but I was thinking the exact same thing.
Okay,
So
Right.
just for the rest of the committee, I assume you caught what Patrick just said, but we will notice a meeting of the advisory committee for 6:40 on Monday night at the gym. And if we need to, we will go find a quiet corner, visible to all, open a meeting. And if we want to discuss or take a further vote, we'll be able to do so consistent with the open meeting law. So, all right, so item 3 isn't ripe for a vote. So our friends in capital budget, well, they're doing God's work, so who am I to criticize? What other items, capital items look like they're coming to the floor?
Sure. So the only other thing, so we have item number 7, which is the Beechwood water main. And initially it was voted, and the source was water stabilization fund, and it is water retained earnings. Chris just wanted me to make a note of that and make you aware of that. That the source is different than what was suggested in the warrant.
that's not Article 7.
Nope, it's Article 5, number 7.
Oh, excuse me. No, you're-
Yeah, it's item 7 so same work, same amount of money,
Yes.
a
do they
different.
have
part of-
100,000 in retained earnings?
I'm sorry?
Do they have 100,000 in retained earnings?
They do. They do.
It was
Uh,
just to clarify that the water commissioners, when they recommended this article, they did recommend retained earnings. It was just really a typo in the warrant article. So there wasn't any clear thought after the warrant article that, oh, let's not take it from here, let's take it from there. It was just a mistake.
Just for the record, Jean, you go ahead.
Do we need to revote it then? Because we did recommend approval by a vote of 7-0 on all the projects except for number 3. But since the funds are coming from someplace else, we might want to revote
And
or
that actually-
re-recommend,
Yeah,
re-recommend.
that's what my question was heading in the same direction. I know there's a distinction, but can you explain in simple terms the distinction between water retained earnings and water stabilization?
Sure. A stabilization fund is invested as a trust fund, so it's invested for the long term and it's governed by Mass General Law. How you set up, it's like a savings account. It's where our capital stabilization fund is. It's where our general stabilization fund is. So the monies are invested differently. It's a 2/3 vote out of at town meeting to appropriate out of the fund. There isn't enough money in the water stabilization fund. There hasn't been in a while. I think we do have an appropriation going in there. Water retained earnings is kind of like your free cash coming from the water enterprise fund. So there
So
is
it all
a big
lives-
difference.
Okay, so it's all water money.
Yes.
It's not general fund money. I think probably just the best approach, and this is for, open for anybody who wants to weigh in, is that we take a confirming vote that as to item 7, we do not change our recommendation if the source of the funds changes from stabilization to retained earnings. Does that work for everybody? I mean, we'll cast it as a motion and take an official vote, but does anybody have any thoughts about that? It seems obvious to me. It's, the water department's pot of money. So, all right, if somebody could.
I'm just wondering about
Go ahead.
the amount of the water retained earnings as of now, because we voted that increase in water rates, and now the water department is turning a huge profit And clearly, there's more than $100,000 in excess funds sitting in retained earnings to fund a capital project like this. So it just seems like to me, like I lose confidence in the management of the water department or the water, the water, when stuff
Commissioners.
like this happens, but
Well, why don't we, I mean, if you like, and that's a good point, if these little details that are embedded in, particularly in a special town meeting warrant, which is end of year accounting or post end of year accounting for the most part, if we have questions about the water department, let's put them on an agenda in January, or February, and have them in and have a conversation about water financing and water rates. And if the committee likes, I'm all for it. Patrick, is that a productive response to your concern?
sure, yeah, that's fine. Is Capital reconsidering this at their meeting tomorrow night? Capital budget?
You're gonna ask them to as well.
So I wonder whether they're gonna say this is no longer a capital improvement project. If it's coming out of retained earnings. I mean, I suppose it's a more than $10,000 item, so they would have to regardless of the source of funds, but yeah, I'm
Jennifer?
fine with it.
Okay, Jennifer, your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that at the end of the fiscal year, the Department of Revenue certified the water retained earnings at around a little bit more than 1.4 million. So I just wanted to let you know what that balance was.
Did they carry any balance over from the prior year, or is that just this year's money?
No, that's so the water, because it's an enterprise fund, the way to look at it is it's kind of like their free cash, their surplus, if you will. I
But
hate to
that's,
say it that way.
my point.
But
Was that
that's a
surplus or net
compilation of, of all years, so it was I don't know what it was certified the year before. It depends on how much you spent. You probably didn't spend all of it and then it rolls over. So it's on your balance sheet, right? So it's from, up until an end point.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that was their surplus for 1 year, no.
Multiple year.
yeah, and then there's, the money out question is, as Patrick points out, this is kind of maybe I think it is practically a capital project, but I think maybe we should fine tune our understanding and if need be, the understanding of some of our other boards about sort of how this, I'm just not gonna say pipeline of money, that would be wrong. But the, how, these surpluses are generated, where they go, what stays in retained earnings, what goes into capital stabilization, and, whether the rates are appropriate for the outlay. So, but that's, I think, not what we need to do with special town meeting in 5 days. So unless anybody has anything further, perhaps a motion to we want to not that we recommend that the advisory committee recommends that
How about a motion to
meeting-
confirm our recommendation?
that's
town
the
meeting.
word I was struggling for.
Yeah, motion to confirm the recommendation, even though the source of funds for item 7 is changed from water stabilization to water retained earnings.
I haven't done this. So move. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Fran? Okay, any further discussion? If none, then a vote. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman, I'm an aye. So,
And Ellen
Yeah.
Mar,
oh, I'm sorry. Jesus, I just jumped right over it. My notes are just such a mess. So
so it's all I.
you are an aye as well. Okay. Yeah, I wrote. Okay. So our next item has to do with the Community Preservation Committee. Yes. What?
There was an
It's not.
addition to
There's
that.
two,
uh,
yeah,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, Michelle. No,
I'm
you-
sorry, Jennifer. There's two other items, line item 8 and line item 13.
Okay,
On capital.
On the
improvement
cap,
project?
yep, within Article 5.
I thought we voted them already.
13.
Well,
There's no
13, yeah, we voted them the last time. didn't we?
There's no 13.
I
No,
don't
there's
have
no
it.
13.
I
So
had some notes that someone was going, there's going to be a proposed add of 13 for $150,000 for a water main break
Yeah.
from some enterprise fund, but this is me reading handwriting on my copy of the warrant. So can somebody expand? Well, let's deal with number 8 first. What do we have? What, if anything, do we have to do with 8?
Sure. So number 8 is the town hall elevator. We just learned yesterday that the cost of that elevator has increased by about $10,000 due to the oil removal by Clean Harbors. So we wanted to amend that amount to read $105,000.
I mean, as a practical matter, I suppose it's something that, I'm sorry, being confronted by a stuffed squirrel with a squeaky tail, and I apologize for that. I suppose as a practical matter, we can, I mean, how does this get amended? It's in the warrant at 95, so presumably the motions will have it higher and it will be presented as amended,
Correct.
okay? But we don't have the motions in front of us. We're just sort of, I mean, not that you're not accurate, obviously, but does anybody have any, Patrick, do you have any views on this? I mean, it's,
Add 10,000 to the cost. I still think it's a project I would support.
particularly since it's a component of removing waste oil. You know, that's easy. Someday well, that's an offline story.
Well, I think that the difference was, it was originally an item to, I can't remember the term that was used, to permanently shut the elevator down, to delist.
To
or
decommission it.
Decommission.
Decommission it.
Then they changed it to, because the environmental condition wasn't quite as bad as they thought, to now repair the elevator and put it back into working condition. And now it sounds like the cleanup of the oil area costs a little bit more than expected. So now they're putting it back into service, is costing a little bit more. Is that right?
That's
That's
correct.
my understanding.
So 10 grand to me, we need an elevator. The building is unusable right now for public meetings, which we need, even though it's a building that should be replaced anyway, we need to get that building back into
And
service.
there's
So
ADA considerations and environmental considerations, and this seems, yeah.
So can we have a motion, Patrick, in the form of your last motion where we, or Ellen, if
Yeah.
you want to kind of give us the last motion, or Patrick.
I would just move to confirm the advisory committee's recommendation to support Article 5, Item 8, with an increased amount of $10,000 to $105,000. So we confirm our recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, I think that was Jean. I heard first. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a vote. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
Ellen Mar,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. That's everybody. Did I get everybody this time? Yes. Okay, now, yes, Jean,
And what's number 13 again? Because it's
that's
not,
what I was about to ask. There's a phantom 13. What's the, Michelle,
So,
can you?
sure. So item number 13 is the emergency water main repair that we had on South Main Street about a month ago. That is also coming from water retained earnings in the amount of $150,000.
So that is, I mean, I assume that emergency repair was performed and the costs are, the services are received. We've paid the bills. It's just a matter of how those bills are going to get funded. If not water retained earnings, where would that come from? General fund? Next year's unpaid bills?
I would say, I mean, if you were to ask me, if it wasn't coming from you have a water enterprise fund, right? So the rates support water, so it should come from water enterprise. But if it wasn't, I would say we'd have to go to the reserve fund.
Yeah,
Because
no.
it was an emergency, it was a water main break, the street was blocked off, we had to fix it, we had no choice. We didn't have enough in maintenance, so they have enough in retained earnings to pay for that. And they'll be actually doing some additional work in the spring to cap that off. But right now, the major work done is they did replace a large pipe down on South Main Street. So that
I
will
assume,
be prepared
go
for a
ahead,
while.
sorry. I assume that everybody on the call is generally familiar with that. I know I saw it when it was happening.
About 140-year-old cast iron pipe that failed.
Just don't make them like they used to.
No, they don't.
We only got
So-
about 7 reverse 911 calls about it over 3 days, so.
Yeah, so, I mean, I see the logic of it, and you're right, it should have been obvious to me that the reserve fund, which is actually the fund that we are the gatekeepers for, would be the next stop for a charge like that, and I would rather keep the reserve fund funded up for something that doesn't come out of it, potentially come out of a fund attached to an enterprise. So that would be, we would be voting fresh, that it would be a motion along the lines of, does the advisor, the advisory committee recommend that town meeting approve item number 13, $150,000 toward costs associated with the South Main Street water main break. So anybody make that motion in second, and we can talk about it a little bit more?
Hold on a second. What's the add-on cost? What do they gotta do in the spring? How much more are we gonna spend out there?
I think they're only gonna spend about 30,000 in the spring. I think it has some, not a culvert, but they have to cap something off. I don't know the technical term for it, but I remember I sat in the water commissioner meeting with Brian Joyce, and he was discussing it. I can't really speak to exactly what they're doing, but I remember asking that specific question. There's a little bit more work that they have to do that they want to wait until after the winter to do.
Because the James Brook runs right under there, and I think.
Yeah, you're right. I think it has something to do with that. I
That's
really
the-
don't know the
That's the
specifics
culvert
of it.
that runs from Smith Place down to the other side of Brook Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that'll be another issue to look at in the spring, I guess then.
Yeah, this on 150 will cover that.
Okay. This 150 will cover that? Okay, well, that was my question. All right, good, fine, yeah.
All the
So,
better.
so we've gotten bills in that are known of 120 or somewhere around 120.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I had sort of suggested the text of the motion. Does anybody want to make that motion? Jean?
So I'll recommend that we approve Article 5, Item 13 for water main, emergency water main repair on South Main Street. Funds to come from water retained earnings in the amount of $150,000.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Ellen is a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. Vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
All right,
Patrick Kennedy,
With a prayer that the water main from the street to my house never bursts.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't say that.
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
Ellen Mar,
aye.
and Rob Hillman. I am also an aye. Good. So, Michelle, before I go rushing on to CPC, which I'm obviously super eager to do, are we good? Have we
Yes.
finished?
Yes,
Excellent.
thank you.
Thanks. No, thank you for your patience. The note here. Okay. So I understand that CPC met the other night. I got fairly late into another email address. Russ Benetti did send me some things relating to the project that they approved. It has to do with a pavilion at the Paul Pratt Library that some people have been calling an amphitheater. Why am I saying this, Michelle? Or can you describe this to us?
Sure. So the library has gone before CPC for a portion of an amphitheater to be built outside the library. It's an open air place. It's going to have benches for seating, a small stage for performances. It's down the slope outside the library. If you're behind the library, parking in the recreation lot is to the left there where that set of double doors that is not being utilized at this point in time. People are going to be able to come out there, enjoy lunch, enjoy a show. The entire project, I believe, is going to cost somewhere around $400,000. Of that is going to be fundraised by the library, the trustees of the library, the Friends of the Library, and they did ask CPC for $125,000 for the remainder. And that's what we're asking you to vote on tonight, is the $125,000 asked for by CPC.
Where is it going to be?
So if you're standing behind the library in the recreation lot,
Yeah.
if you look up, there's a set of double doors to the left-hand side that is not being utilized at the present time. So it's going to be down that hill towards Sawyer Street.
So you're talking about the side of the library towards Sawyer Street, not the back of it facing the playground.
No, it's going to run down the hill towards Sawyer Street.
Like the northwest corner of the property. So it's between the building and so there's the parking lot and Sawyer and the building. It's that spot there.
Yes.
Okay, makes sense.
Let me see if I can pull up a quick
The
drawing.
double
for you.
doors that I'm aware of are on the north end of the building, which if you walk into the library from the library parking lot and you went right straight across, there's a set of double doors out there.
You're
now.
coming down Sawyer past the music circus before you get to the light. There's the driveway to enter the parking lot, and then just after that driveway, it's that spot right there.
So it's kind of behind the library. What is behind the library?
Depends what you mean by behind or above, right? It's
Spent
Yeah,
6 years
if
in
you'd
school
allow me
there,
to
but I
just
can't
share my
picture it.
screen, I can show you.
Yeah.
Would you like to see?
Sure.
I've got, oh, there we are. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was talking about. Okay, I get you. Yep.
Oh, all right, that was easy.
I thought you were talking about at the bottom of it there, but you were talking on the side towards Sawyer Street. I get you. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So now the library hasn't undertaken its fundraising effort yet.
They have not.
I know
They
from,
started, the Cohasset Library Trust had an event last night. They
Oh.
started solicitations for the capital associated with the library's contribution to this project.
my recollection of various projects, including the construction of the current library, is that the library trustees are very capable fundraisers. Personally, I have all the faith in the world that they'll raise what they need. If they don't, for some reason, the money goes back to CPC, right? Yeah. And
Yes.
CPC approved it. So
Is
any
there some
more questions?
horizon on them? Like, do they have forever to raise the money? Or I'm not trying to hold them to some like arbitrarily harsh standard. I'm just wondering, like, are they like, oh, we're still working on it? Like,
They can be I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say the CPC funds can be rolled over year over year. They don't anticipate that need. They feel as though they may be able to break ground this summer.
wow,
So
okay.
they're aggressively fundraising.
So, any more questions? Does somebody want to make a motion and then we can have more discussion with a seconded motion if we like?
What was the CPC vote on this? Do we know?
Yep, the CPC vote was unanimous 7-0.
I saw the design in a pretty big schematic. And it looks like an outdoor classroom. It looks like a really good facility. And I know they mentioned during COVID, when they set up a tent back there and did a lot of outdoor events and lectures and things, that they were extremely well attended and well received. So I think there's a need for this. I think it's going to be well utilized. It could be used by other departments in town. Schools could use it when it's not being used by library. I think it's going to be really good if it gets built. So
Mom,
And
Steph,
what's the total cost?
estimate 400 grand.
400, all right.
I agree with Patrick. I was really looking forward to seeing it built, and I think it will have, I mean, I assume it'll be, if it's not being used for something, I mean, part of their marketing is if you're walking by with a cup of coffee and you want to sit down and access the library Wi-Fi, it's there. So, you know, other groups, you know, scouts could use it for things and stuff. I think it's awesome. So, somebody want to make a motion?
I move that the advisory committee recommend to town meeting Article 6 item for the library amphitheater in the amount of $125,000.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Mark, any further discussion? Hearing none, vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
aye, but I think Ellen has a
Lamar.
question.
Let's just get the vote for Ellen's sake, and then we'll any questions, fine. Ellen Mar? You're muted. You're muted.
Aye.
There you go. And Rob Hillman is an aye. Mark had a question. Ellen's hand is up. So Mark, go ahead.
No, I was trying to recognize Ellen's hand. I saw it come up as we were about to take the vote. I didn't know if we started voting before her hand went up.
I'm sorry. I was looking down. Ellen, did you have something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just a procedural question. I mean, in the warrant, we have recommendation at town meeting. And so are we voting these now one by one? Or are we only voting on this one?
The other two aren't, the CPC didn't advance them, so we're only, I think the motion was only to recommend the Beechwood Playground, but I assume that,
Library
that-
amphitheater.
I'm sorry, did I see Beechwood? Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I was looking at, not what we actually voted. It's been a long week already. Michelle, the motions that will be distributed at town meeting will make it clear that this article relates only to the $125,000 for the amphitheater, correct?
That's
Okay,
correct.
so that's what we voted. We voted to recommend that. So, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes. What, if anything, at town meeting do we need to stand up and explain? And I think this is one of them. Somebody should just make it clear, or Dan can do it for us. Just say, in the warrant, it says recommendation at town meeting, because, you know, CPC subsequently voted for this one project. We recommend that one project. Does that work, Alan?
Yeah, so CPC did not vote or is not recommending the lacrosse wall and the Beechwood playground improvements?
That's correct.
Okay.
So. and
It's
that if
it's
they
not
don't
that
do
they're
it,
not recommending, it's that they're not advancing them even to the town meeting floor. So it's not even, they're not even on the table for town meeting, the way I understand it.
that's correct.
Right?
Well, they are until a motion is made, because they're in the warrant. Right?
Yeah, but there's always a motion on the
Okay.
town meeting floor. It just, they just won't be in the motion, so they're not being
Yeah.
advanced.
So, if I'm correct, the only open item is, Article 15.
Mhm.
The harbor article. And this is what I know, and it isn't all that much. We had a presentation from the proponents. I sent everybody a link to an event that the select board had that wasn't a deliberative meeting. They had people come in and express viewpoints on it. That's a thing I know. Another thing that I know is that as of now, town council hasn't provided an opinion on it one way or the other in an official opinion letter. Because I know that was something that we had discussed and may be relevant to some people's decision on this. And I believe the select board has a meeting scheduled for Friday. And I believe this is an agenda item at that meeting, but you know, what they vote is what they vote. So, I think we had a pretty robust discussion before. We probably should have another, review of it anyhow. So I think maybe some comments from folks, and then we'll see if we're moving in a direction to put together a motion. I think we have options in terms of what we want to do. I'm not going to prejudice the discussion by necessarily identifying what I think they are, but why don't we just talk about it for a little bit, and then without prolonging it needlessly, kind of see if we've got a consensus or a point at which there's a disagreement that that's going to require a prevailing position and a minority position. So Ellen's hand was up first, Fran's is up second.
Sorry, my hand was up from before. I apologize.
Then Fran, the floor is yours.
While I feel that these proponents have their best wishes in this issue, I think what we're trying to do is to protect Cohasset's maritime playground, which belongs to Situate. And I think that trying to ram it down Situate's throat like this, I don't think we're going to do it. We'll be able to do it anyway. I said this is the best way to make it not happen. Now, there are any number of ways to protect ocean areas. President Obama, 8 or 9 years ago, established the Marine Sanctuary south, about 100 miles southeast of Nantucket, out on the, we call out the canyons on the edge of the continental shelf. Of course, we had President Trump in Maine a couple of years ago telling how much he did by rescinding that to help the Maine fishermen. I don't need many lobster fishermen driving their boats 250 miles to catch lobsters out on the continental shelf out there. But regardless, the Coast Guard has jurisdiction to set up safety zones. The Coast Guard has jurisdiction to set up marine sanctuary zones. They have jurisdiction to set up dumping zones, all kinds of zones in the ocean. We have the Department of Natural Resources in the state that can establish a natural resource area where things have to be left as is. We also have the Bureau of Commercial Fisheries in Washington. That's the wrong name. I'm giving them, that's the old name of them. But there are a number of ways that we can use to protect our marine environment. I'm very much in favor of protecting the marine environment, and I think that that's what these folks are trying to do. But I think they're way overstepping their bounds, and I think that they should spend more time trying to discuss with Situate. Now, if Situate allows oyster farming out there, they got to have some way to tend to their gear. Now, are they going to want to run their boats at least an hour from Situate Harbor up there to the Glades to work on their oyster traps and stuff? No, they're going to want to come into Cohasset. Guess what? There's no room there is no mooring space in Cohasset, as some of you probably know, who've been on the list for 350 years. And there's also no parking. So there's a major problem here. Situate, for the licensing for an oyster farm, I think they're about $25 for a license. So Situate stands to make about $50 from this operation. But we're not looking at it, this isn't a major economic disaster for the town of Situate. However, it is Situate's territorial waters. It is not our territorial waters. And we have no business trying to tell them what to do with their territorial waters, even though it's Cohasset's marine playground. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I don't think I need to, but I sort of painted a picture of what is. The we had a very articulate presentation of what all of these words meant in this proposal, very, very articulate, but a lot of it was mostly noise, as far as I'm concerned. And they tried to assume that the Cohasset Harbor was the area what we call the flats, where that's out of water at low tide. Well, I've been here for 80 years, and I never remember anybody anymore in any boats out there, because it's out of water at low tide. We don't have that. Now, ports in England have locks where you lock in. Liverpool is a great port. We go into Liverpool and they open the lock, and we go in, discharge our cargo. If the tide's right, we open the locks and we go out again. Places all over the world like that. Cohasset isn't one of them. So Cohasset Harbor is that area inside the breakwater that runs over towards Atlantica. And the cove is that area from westward, from the Atlantica up to the head of the cove, which is what we call it. So we've got there's a lot of different, what's the right word? Definitions that need to be established. Is what are we really talking about? And they use this 53 bylaw from the state to establish Cohasset's authority from Whitehead or from the Third Dolphin, the Dolphin, those big structures that have the lights on into the harbor, the Third Dolphin over to White Rock. That doesn't even come close to covering the area these people want to put their oyster farms on. So I think I think we're tilting at windmills here anyway. So anyway, that's my opinion.
Anybody else? I'll add this. I'd be interested in anybody's response to it, is that, there's been a lot of really comprehensive and I think well thought out presentations and parsing statutes and legislative history and things by, people who are advocating for this, but I'm disturbed by the lack of, we wouldn't build a bridge without an opinion from the town engineer. I'm hesitant to amend a bylaw without an opinion of town council.
Yep.
And even though, in another world, I might be the person writing that opinion, I still think that, a municipality hires professionals for a reason. And that's one consideration. Two completely unrelated considerations is I'm not sure that passing this necessarily triggers a lot of consequences. I think at least the people who are thinking this more systematically, and maybe as it's been discussed, more and more people are thinking about it more systematically, is we have lots more relations with Situate than this problem. We have a lot more relations with Situate in the harbor area than this issue. And that by passing this, on the one hand, you provide a tool in negotiation, but on the other hand, it may send a very, very bad signal about trying to reach a set of agreements between sort of adults around a table, rather than everybody seeing what size baseball bat they can find to bring to that table. I'm not sure, but by not adopting it at this point doesn't mean it can never be adopted. This isn't a one and done thing. I would imagine it'd probably be a 2-year closed window for a warrant article, perhaps, but the select board could advance it in a different form and one that's been vetted by council. I'm just, from a process standpoint, I'm not in love with it. So but I could be convinced. So does anybody have any other thoughts, or does somebody want to frame a motion to approve or not approve? Then Fran, go ahead.
Obviously, you know where I'm coming from. Yeah, I would like to propose a motion that we not approve Article 15 Citizens Petition - Navigation Bylaw.
Okay, we have a motion. If we have a second and a vote and the motion doesn't pass, then what I think would happen logically is someone would make the opposite motion and we see if we could pass that. Or conceivably, people may choose to abstain. I don't know what you're going to vote. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Patrick seconds the motion. Do we have further discussion?
Yeah, I don't there's nothing I can really add to the discussion. I agree with Fran and I agree with Rob, all the points raised. I think probably a disproportionate amount of time has been invested by the town and a lot of people in the town over this issue, when there's a lot of really substantive, I'm not saying this isn't substantive, because I think it is. I do think it's important, but we have a lot more important issues facing the town, budgetary issues, school funding issues. I'd like to see a lot of the effort that went into this go into some other issues. So my 2 cents.
Further discussion before we call a vote? Mark, I see a hand. Ellen, I see a hand.
Ellen, you want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead, Mark.
I still get back to the comment I made a few meetings ago that like, what's the quote from Monty Python? An old lady drawing a sword from a rock is no basis by which to form a system of government. Like, I'm not sure how we end up with being the ones to decide on this. It's just like you said, town council, whether it's a law from the 50s or a maritime law from the 1800s, I don't know how qualified or not as the 9 of us may be here, how this is in our hands. And I don't mean to be wishy-washy on this or to abstain. It just feels like a much bigger issue than we're qualified to weigh in on. And what weight does our weighing in on it even have, I guess? Like what does it matter? We could vote 9 to no, nothing, or nothing to 9. Does it really matter when the lawyers sit down and start like bringing out maps and stuff like that?
Can I respond? I just.
Please, yeah,
When you raised those questions last time, I didn't know whether to go into kind of an existential crisis but they're
I feel like
really
I'm the only one
questions.
having one. So if someone wants to join me,
I'll join you. But I think the issue is you raise an important question, but it's our role, as it was described to me, as I believe it to be, is we're a proxy essentially for the members of the public who attend town meeting. Our job is to listen to arguments and apply our best judgment. We have no actual power. And in fact, we are useful only in as much as we don't exercise authority. We don't, this is a great committee because there's not a lot of agendas or not people trying to push a project, to get done directly to benefit, their pal down the street.
That's why it's called advisory.
Right. Our use is to say, look, we're a group of engaged citizens that listened to these arguments, and here's what we think.
You want to?
And the answer to let me finish this one thought, and then and the answer to your question is like, what qualifies us is the decision to have an open meeting form of town government means that every single registered voter in Cohasset comes in and has a vote, and they have exactly as many votes as we have each, just one. So our job is to, give our best shot. This is what we think. And then the proponents, can persuade town meeting or not. I would suggest if you're, uncomfortable personally, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, is express to abstain or vote no. But I think our job is to vote, because town meeting's no more qualified than we are, person to person. We're sort of trusted to do a little bit of homework, which we do, and to listen to presentations, which we do, and talk about it amongst ourselves, which we do. And then we vote. And whether anyone considers that line from the advisory committee to be the least bit persuasive or not, I can't say. But, we'll have done our job and can proceed through our existential crisis with a clean contract. Ellen and then Fran.
I appreciate
I'm sorry,
that.
Mark.
No, I was just
it's
saying,
a
I
great
appreciate
question.
that. Thanks. I've never felt less qualified to vote one way or the other. So maybe abstaining is the method. So thanks.
Ellen?
So, I'm with Mark in that I don't feel qualified to vote on this, but for me, it's also an emotional issue because I grew up in this town and I sailed and we boated and we swim and now we still boat and we use that area recreationally. And the thought that it might not be available, is a challenge. It's like that's a bummer because we go there. However, I I agree with Mark. I don't feel qualified to answer on this. And I agree with Franny in that I never thought of that as Cohasset waters, even all those years in boating in this town. My family's been here since 1966, and my dad had a mooring from the late 60s right through, gosh, I don't know, the late 80s. So it's challenging. And I don't know if anyone watched when it was presented at the select board meeting, but Jack Buckley got up and spoke quite articulately, and he did a lot of research down at the Historical Society. And I wish I could find my note. He asked a question that I don't believe was ever answered, that there's something in subsequent town bylaw after 1953 that defines this better and this area better. And I apologize. I wish I could find that note. Took it, but I thought it was quite compelling, and no one from the proponents of the petition answered the question that he had. So until that question, and I'll go back and I'll find it, is answered, I think it's really hard to vote, to affirm this.
Okay. Fran?
Yeah, I think that, and I appreciate your concern about not having enough information. None of us do. But one of the pieces of information that I asked of the proponents was, what are the limits? Well, they couldn't tell me. I said, with a piece of land, you have meets and bounds, and it establishes the boundaries of your land. In the ocean, we have longitude and latitude, and it's very easy to determine. Well, they couldn't tell me what the extent of it was. And the thing, and when Jack Buckley's presentation was spectacular. It was magnificent. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of CSCR with him down there.
Okay.
But we are trying to legislate Cohasset's wishes and rules and regulations on Situate's territorial property. It is their marine property. It is not ours. And there are also people in the Glades that own a fair amount of it down to the low tide mark. As a matter of fact, their proponent couldn't tell me where the charts go to. The charts go to the low tide. They don't go to the high tide. So we're trying to, it would be like telling Hingham, I don't know, I can't think of an analogy, but it's just, we're trying to tell some other town what to do with their property to benefit us. It just doesn't work that way. It's wrong. We need to find other avenues where we can get a consensus between Situate and Cohasset and whatever other governmental, higher up governmental authority that can say, yes, this land really needs to be preserved, for conservancy. It needs to be conserved. We need to have hatchery areas. One of the proponents said that somebody had released green crabs and ate all of the eelgrass out of there last year. Well, that's baloney. We had a massive die-off in eelgrass all up and down the coast. Tragically, we haven't had eelgrass here for over 50 years, and now it's back, and now we just lost a whole bunch of it again. So we don't know really why, but eelgrass is a great hatchery for scallops, for crabs, for flounders, for herring, for anything you can think of. That whole area. So it really needs to be preserved. I'm 100% in agreement with what they want to do, but the way they're proposing to do it is just flat wrong, because we're trying to tell another town and another county what to do with their land or their territorial waters.
Okay, so.
And I've been using on these waters since 1948, so I've been seeing a lot of tides come and go.
I would only add that, maybe it's just an occupational hazard, but I generally simply assume that I can give an opinion on anything. And I'm sure Patrick recognizes that tendency in our trade. But I also recognize that, there are limitations. There are these questions that are very difficult. Even if we've applied ourselves, you might feel like I can't quite get this, which is why the town retains experts. It's why when we build a bridge, we have engineers. When we build a highway, we have engineers. When we build a building, we have architects. If we're passing a bylaw, we have experts. And for reasons that are unknown to me, we do not have those experts giving us an opinion. and therefore, nor did the proponents come in with an opinion letter. A lot of people gave articulate reasons why they read the statute the way they read the statute. But, it isn't the equivalent of stamped drawings, as far as I'm concerned. So, without that, my inclination is comfortable passing the vote that kind of reflects that unease. Mark.
I'm just gonna say, I appreciate Alan's comments, and I think there's a difference between voting for what we personally want, which is, sure, make this hard, we'll make the whole Atlantic Ocean go acid waters, right? Versus what we actually believe is right. So that's kind of where I stand on this. So I just want to say thanks to Alan.
Cool. Any other comments? I think we have a motion in a second. Ellen, do we have a motion in a second?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll proceed with a vote by roll call. Jean,
Aye.
Fran.
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Mark,
I'm gonna abstain.
Ellen,
Aye.
and that leaves me, Rob Hillman. I am an aye as well. So, we have completed our obligations to the warrant. I wanted this meeting to be over by 8:30, and that's not a reason to over hurry anything, but just to kind of stay on with the few things we have to do. At town meeting, it used to be that both the select board and the advisory committee would send somebody up as to virtually every article to stand at the microphone and say, the advisory committee voted 7-0 to approve this article. And Dan Evans realized that added, 10 unnecessary minutes to a meeting, and has asked the boards not to do so unless there's a compelling reason to express the board's view on any given article.
Idea.
It is. And as to most of these articles, I mean, obviously, any of us can speak as individuals and can refer to the board, the vote, if as part of their remarks they choose to. Does anybody think that there are specific articles to which one of us should say a few words? I think possibly both citizens petitions come to mind, but
Agree with that.
what do we think? Yeah,
I was just gonna say this one, I think we need to explain our vote.
I think, okay, I think you're right. So just going through the warrant, I just don't see anything else that's likely to be controversial. I think there was a lesson to be learned from the zoning article a year ago at special town meeting that got that got ambushed, as far as I could tell, by opponents who never showed up for these kinds of meetings to articulate reservations, and then showed up at town meeting with and there wasn't the boards and the proponents of the zoning articles weren't adequately prepared to deal with that, us included. So at the next meeting, for example, when zoning comes up, I don't think the wetlands article here is something we need to be prepared for, but there may be some that we need to be prepared for that are more workaday. But I think we probably all agree that somebody should say something about the roads, somebody should say something about the harbor article. Does anyone want to be our voice and face on, say, the roads, the citizens petition on roads? Unless nobody else, I'm willing to, because I think there are a few points there in explaining that we voted on what was in front of us. It is important that we weren't necessarily saying that we oppose sidewalks on King Street, but I think in my individual capacity, I might stand right back up and say that I don't think the town meeting is an appropriate place for groups to jump the line where there are a lot of sidewalk projects and sidewalks are terribly expensive. But I'm guessing that other people will make that point. But as far as that goes, our vote is really limited, and I'm happy to make that explanation. Is everybody okay with that? All right. Who wants to do the water one? The harbor one? I think, you know, clearly one of us has more experience with liquid and things that float on it than all of the rest of us combined. Fran, would you,
Yeah,
okay, I think you know, just try to, you know, deliver some remarks that capture the essence of kind of our shared opinion. And I think it would make sense to, because one thing we always do is if it's something other than a unanimous vote is to acknowledge that it wasn't unanimous. And Mark, would something along the lines, you know, without identifying you as an individually by any means, but just say there was some concern on the board that this was, you know, an unduly complex matter that perhaps needed more information in the record or something like that?
Absolutely. And if you all want to look at me as that said, so as to identify me without naming me by name, that's fine too. I'm
It's
perfectly
just-
happy being known as the guy who said, I don't feel comfortable weighing in on this.
This, you know, threes of people are going to watch this meeting on YouTube. You know, I mean, it's going to be in the internet for eternity. That and my dog's squeaky toy. So, Ellen,
I just have another procedural question. So we notify the moderator that we're going to have someone speak to Article 14 and Article 15. If prior to that, there's conversation on town meeting floor about any of the previous articles, and you know, whether it's contentious or not, does someone from advisory have an opportunity or from the select board to get up and speak to it based on what's happening at the moment?
I think there are two answers to that question. Both of them are yes. And in reverse order, any of us can speak as individuals. I gave a ringing critique of democracy at the last annual town meeting. And I very much did so saying that I was not doing that as a representative of the advisory committee. So any of us can speak as individuals. If something's going sideways, or if somebody on the floor says, hey, the advisory committee voted X, I'd like to know why. I think probably I've seen it happen. We look up and down the table and one of us becomes the instant spokesperson and goes up and says, yeah, we voted on this and this is how we voted. And this is a summary of our reasoning. And that could be, you know, any of us.
Okay.
That's my understanding of how it works. Does anybody have any other, Fran, your hands up?
no, just to respond to Mark, I appreciate your comments and I think that's an appropriate comment. You know, we're an advising body and we have to advise on what we know and how things are. So, you know, I don't have any problems at all with your position. I think you're 100% correct if that's how you feel. So it's I mean, I'm glad that we all can express our opinions and I'll have, you know, and have some discussions on them. I think it's great.
All right, so we'll be prepared for that. The other things I wanted to accomplish is we have some minutes to vote. Ellen, if you could, I circulated them with the email that I sent, I think on Monday. If you want to introduce them and we'll vote them.
All right, Patrick sent out, so we'll do it in chronological order. Patrick sent out the meeting minutes of Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, or recommendations? No?
Yeah, we accept them.
Okay,
We have a
so,
motion to accept,
Oh, second,
seconded by Jean. Why don't we just vote each one just to be extra sure we do it right? Any discussion? Hearing none. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yep, so,
I have a correction to my own minutes.
okay, well, I was
I've
just gonna.
I've duplicate, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't know if Fran can make the motion to accept the minutes because he was absent from the meeting.
Technically, he can, but if somebody would be more comfortable with someone else.
But
Yeah.
that's fine. I just wanted to point that out. Okay. Sorry, Patrick, what's your correction?
In where I listed guests, I just listed Jennifer Mullen, town accountant, twice, so I'll strike, before I finalize them, I'll strike one of those.
Yeah, unless she has a doppelganger, I don't think that's a substantive amendment. So,
And is that the right title? Town accountant?
finance director. isn't it?
Finance director.
Finance, sorry, so.
I answered to both.
Finance, should I make it finance director? Okay, so I'll strike one of the multiple entries of Jennifer Mullen and change the title to finance director. So that would be a revision, correction.
Okay, vote to approve Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye,
Mark Maggi. Mark,
Aye.
Ellen Mar,
I abstain. I wasn't there.
okay, and Rob Hillman is an aye. Okay, the next set, Ellen,
Okay, is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2022. We have a motion to approve.
Was it the 22nd or the 26th?
26. Sorry.
sounds like a motion to me.
it does sound like a motion. Second,
Second.
Fran. Discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye,
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
Ellen Mar,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman. I am an aye. Approved. And then the third set is,
November 2nd, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve.
okay, second,
Second.
seconded, comments?
just a correction. I think Jennifer, your name is Mullen? Last name,
Yes.
all right? So I think there's a misspelling of Jennifer's name.
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Jennifer.
We'll
No
correct
worries.
on the previous as well.
It's
Okay. Any other? Any other comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, we'll vote on this one. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
aye,
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
Ellen Mar,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So the last order of business has to do with upcoming meetings. We'll notice a meeting for prior to the 20 of 7 on Monday, in case there's anything we need to consider. After that, I'll circulate for some times in early January after the holidays. The first order of business in January will be by bylaw. The committee needs to reorganize itself. If anyone is interested and would be more fulfilled as a citizen to chair this committee, please feel free to let me know. I will say this, I don't think there's a single person on this committee who wouldn't be a great chairman. I think we have the luxury of a lot of talent and I really enjoy working with this quite a lot. I am eligible for one more year, and if the iron jackboot of my chairmanship is something that you continue to assent to, if nominated, I will run. If elected, I will serve. But seriously, if somebody else wants to do this, I'm wide open to retiring to Argentina or something. So, but that's just a preview of something we need to do.
Okay.
when we get started. And then we should think about how we can make ourselves useful prior to town meeting. I mean, we've got budget concerns. I know we've got a subcommittee working on the biggest chunk of that. If we want to start to take a look at things like enterprise funds and stuff like that, let's do it. So, anything else? All right, then everybody's favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Moved, seconded, roll call, Gina Stino.
Aye.
Fran Collins,
aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
Mark Maggi,
Myself and my 2 young kids who need to be put to bed all say aye.
Ellen Mar,
Aye.
and me and the disruptive puppy who I need to go deal with some more are also an aye.
I'll trade you,
So,
Rob.
No, thank you. Been there, done
Been
that.
there, done that. All of
Yeah,
us.
I'll take the retriever. Thank you. But good times. I look forward to seeing everybody live on Monday night and hopefully it'll be I don't think it'll be the briskest STM ever, but hopefully it'll be efficient. So we'll see you then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
Monday. Have a good
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Have a
Take
good
care.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.